Сәлеметсіздер ме, құрметті достар. Бүгін сіздермен бірге Debat Eli командасы, мен Жанерке.
Және Бекзат.
Бүгін біздің Debat Eli подкастымыздың тұсаукесері. Сіздерге ұнайды деген ойдамыз.
Және біздің алғашқы подкастымыздың қонақтары Central Asian IB пікірсайыс турнирінің төрешілері Дэвид және Клаудия.
Сіздерге ұнайды деген ойдамыз. Бәрімізге сәттілік. Ендеше кеттік.
Okay, guys. Hi, everyone. This is the first edition of our podcast. Before we start, I want to introduce myself. My name is Jabek. This is Mukhtar, my co-host. And we also have wonderful guests, Claudia and David. Warm welcome. First of all, we wanted to also say thanks to Debat Eli, the organizers of this podcast. This is the public fund that organize the debating tournaments in Kazakhstan. They sponsor our largest debating tournaments. They also provide the platform for Kazakhstani debaters to participate in world level debate tournaments and just facilitate our integration with the world community.
Yeah. All right. Well, I guess we can get started. And I guess maybe people who are going to be watching this podcast know us together with Shebek, but they probably know about you guys as well, to be fair. Yeah. But it would be best if you introduce yourself. So maybe Claudia, we can just start with you.
Hi, I'm Claudia. I'm from Poland. Currently, I'm working full-time and I'm coaching national team of Poland in WSDC format. But before I was... Can I use like debate lingo?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, awesome, because I wasn't sure. I was a CA of European Championship and Deputy Chief Educator of World Championship. And I did that way too many times to spend to talk about it here, but it was a lot of tournaments, over 100. And I also spoke occasionally. I judge a lot. So I think it's a good time to pass to David, who definitely spoke more than me.
Hi, I'm David. Right now I'm doing my master's in Cambridge. I'm studying computer science. I'm from the Philippines. I used to debate. I mostly just hang around now. I won a few tournaments in my time, which was just a few years ago, to be fair, surrounded by older people. I judge much rarer than I debate, but I used to debate a lot for Ateneo back in the Philippines. Other than that, I like to run, and I like to go on hikes and go rock climbing.
I think you're being way too humble when you say I
just
won
a few tournaments.
You know, some of the tournaments that you won.
This for nothing. They're like
some are pretty important, I would say.
A couple probably. Like yeah, sure. So okay, guys. So you came to Astana
yesterday,
not so long ago, I guess, but you had some time to hang around. Maybe could you just tell us a little bit about your experience in the city? Like, what did you get to do? Maybe are your expectations being met? Maybe they're being kind of subversed in some way or another? Just something like that in general.
Okay, I can start.
Yeah, you've been here for a little bit longer, for whatever reason.
Kind of. I went to National Museum, and I really like it. I like art and paintings, so it was very cool. And what I was surprised is the different architecture across the city. So that was something which I was not really prepared for, but it's very nice. We walked a lot today. I'm still into trying local cuisine, so that's the plan for later and for tomorrow. But yeah, so far I like Astana, and it's not as cold as we are expecting based on forecast. So I think all good so far.
Yeah, I really like the scenery. I was hit a lot harder by the jet lag than my international companions. But we got to go to the park, and I really loved like looking around and seeing the snow. I actually don't see snow very often because it doesn't snow in Cambridge, and it definitely doesn't snow in the Philippines. But it's a very lovely place so far. It's very clean, very nice.
Okay, that's great. I think the weather is actually nice today. And yesterday, I guess it was also fine. But before we had like -10 and a lot of snow. and a lot of wind. So the first thing that we want to discuss is that both of you are not from some really privileged communities, and Kazakhstan is also not one of them. So we wanted to ask, how do you think, what is the key to develop the local community, the local debating community, to create more integration, and how to facilitate it?
That's a good question. For me, I think there are many answers. I've thought a little bit about how to develop a good debate society and a debate community. I think the most important factor that I've seen throughout all of these things is that you have to cultivate a genuine love and enjoyment of the sport, because that everything else follows after that. You need to have good talent, come back and train the kids, but you need to have the talent, enjoy the sport, have it be a good community. You need to have new people come in, but they have to enjoy the sport and they have to find a welcoming community to stay. You have to have regular tournaments, but for people to want to host tournaments, they have to enjoy. So in the end, I think it all comes down to you have a good culture, a welcoming culture that keeps people going and keeps people staying and debating again and again.
Okay, but before that, can you just give us a little description of what is the community in Poland and in Philippines like?
Okay, so I think in Poland it was a bit different for me, because the Polish boom for debating was when I wasn't speaking English yet. So a couple of years ago, and then we had some delegations going to Vilnius regularly, to Kyiv, to the neighboring countries, to Budapest, because it was cheap, affordable, so it was like a community group trip. And then it's kind of started changing the generation, and the new generation was not necessarily super keen to go because they were a bit afraid of English. But I was like, okay, I want to learn English, I want to understand and talk to these people, so I kind of tried to break this barrier by myself, and I think it helped me because I was a bit of a social butterfly, so I could blend with people, and also I think people abroad are also very friendly if you let them or if you find the right people. So I think the community in Poland was a bit divided, that there were some people who were doing only tournaments in Poland and were not necessarily interested, or they didn't want to waste their time to go for tournaments when they will not have achievements and they didn't see the future for them. So they started developing the local scene. And there were then started being a group which wanted to do more, which wanted to break the barriers, which wanted to get higher and higher achievements. But to be fair, compared to Ateneo and Philippines, I was a bit alone in my journey because it wasn't the time when a lot of people were going. And I think what helped me was that I was blending with different societies as well. And it became easier then to build more, to learn from people who already had this developed, and then spreading this in Poland back there. So sometimes I think you need a push of 1, 2, or 3 people who will go there, who will get the know-how, and then if you have the community which David is talking about, you will come back and people will be appreciating this, people will be asking you, and they will see that if one person was capable to get this break, if one person was capable to win this tournament, that it's possible for more of them. That's obviously if you have money and other technical factors, but I think the drive and the love for the sport, it need to be connected with the faith that you can actually do a bit more than your current achievements.
Yeah, I think the Philippines was a very, very rigorously developed since the early 2000s, in the sense that the first national tournament, the prize for winning, back in the 1990s, was you get a free ticket to go to Worlds. And it's always been the goal of the Philippines to have success in the region, in Asia. But only recently did we start aiming our sights higher. And I think Claudia's right. You have to have 1 or 2 people really pave the way and really tell their story so that everybody can start to dream higher. That for us, that was Miko and Ignacio when they made World's Quarters for the Philippines, which was the first time in however many years. So in the next years, which thankfully, or not thankfully, coincided with COVID, then we sent it 20 teams or 10 teams instead of just 1 or 2. And that for us changed everything. This was all built on a very solid foundation of having heavy investment from the colleges into high school debating, so that when high schoolers went to university, they were like, we should debate and we should try debating, because we did it a little bit in high school. And so once you have a solid pool of talent and competitive foundation, that's when you can start building a strong college circuit also.
All right, that sounds really interesting. But I would also like to ask like about your local circuits more so, because that's obviously a lot about international involvement. But so, for example, in Kazakhstan, you have a bit of a situation where you have, well, you have a lot of divisions between different circuits in different cities because that's a big country. So almost every city has a debating circuit, but some debating circuits primarily speak in one language, some are in the other, some are more mixed, but for example don't really interact that much with international debating, English language debating, etc. And so there is a bit of a culture difference almost everywhere, and everyone kind of does their own thing. Obviously there is a bit more integration now, and there is more of the stuff that David is talking about, with more school students trying to get into debating, more development from that front. So how is it again, like in Poland and Philippines, do you have like different city circuits which compete against each other? Is there some kind of point of not national but like local pride in that sense? Do you have maybe, because in some place you have like one strong institution, like in, I don't know, Zagreb or Vienna maybe, which everyone flocks to, but then in some place you have a bunch of strong institutions within one city. So how is the scene, back home for you guys?
So when I started debating, there was only debating in Warsaw, basically, so in a capital. And Polska Debatuje, so Polish Debate Foundation, started to organizing a workshop, and they sent people to Krakow, Gdańsk, Poznań, so the other big cities. And then in Krakow, where I was studying, there was this one guy, Radek, who really wanted to create a debate club. And out of nowhere, he asked me if I want to be his vice chief, or like if I want to form a debate society with him. And then you start slowly, like you just need two freaks who actually want to start something. But B, we don't have much cultural division in Poland. So basically, there are different clubs, but they are not that different from each other. Obviously, they're competitive, like everyone wants to win like the league, like, combine the trophies. But what unites the people is if you have a Polish nationals, which are respected like a tournament that everyone is going there, both to have fun and both to showcase. And what also changed the scene was that the different cities than Warsaw started to winning. Because when debating got more popular and you get more access to resources, it came up that you don't need to be in the biggest city and have the club meetings specifically with these people, but you can also develop yourself. So I would say that having events which are respected and being perceived as fun by everyone, that people are still want to crave and go, and therefore kind of brag that they did it well there, are one solution. But B, being open-minded also for some compromises or some other tweaks from other formats. So for example, some people from one format might have some input or some issues with the other format, and if they articulate and if you are capable to meet this, maybe you will send your people to one tournament there to show that you also kind of respect their work, even if you will primarily be doing that one, which also show then that you can discuss, you can have more productive like solutions to what to do in the future. So just to sum up this, I would say that we don't have massive divisions, but how they were overcome or how people will come together, it's having a respect to this one yearly event that doesn't need to be on a weekly or something, that people actually talk about during the year. That they are going to local tournaments, they're like, we are prepping for this one, or like, I will see you there. So yeah, that I think would be from me.
The division in the Philippine circuit is a bit stronger because, it's an archipelago, right? So the islands are a bit harder to go from place to place. They're divided into the three main islands of the Philippines. Luzon, Visayas, and Mindanao. And so Mindanao and Visayas have their sort of regular regional tournament that happens every year. And then Luzon, they don't have one for some reason. But that's also where the capital is, and typically we'll have a national tournament, one for British parliamentary and one for Asian parliamentary format. The divisions are pretty solid in the sense that we don't see each other very regularly until we come see each other in nationals, then we'll debate against each other. Whether or not this is good, I'm not super sure, because the divisions are good in that there's a lot of diversity and a lot of very welcome stuff in debating, but it's very heterogeneous, and typically a lot of resources, both money and also talent, are really concentrated heavily in Manila. The tradition is usually, if you want to go to a certain school, it's in Manila, so you have to travel there. So it's a bit harder, definitely a bit harder. Provincial debaters face a lot more barriers, financially as well as in terms of institutional support. But there's also a lot of talent that, we're not harnessing as much as we can.
This was really interesting. Another question that I want to ask about the integration inside the local communities is, do you have a lot of interaction among the clubs? Do you mentor other kids from other clubs or something like that? Because it's not something really frequent in Kazakhstan, and what happens in your communities?
I think it comes with time. So a couple of years ago when we started participating in World Schools format, most of the kids were from Warsaw because that was the developed circuit. But now my current team and the last team when I'm running have kids from Gdańsk, Poznań, Krakow and Warsaw. So you kind of make them work together. And then since they become colleagues because they're working together for a national team, they're also doing together a local tournament. So for example, this weekend, 2 of my kids from the team are speaking together. 2 other kids are speaking with also partners from different cities. They're asking people who are a bit pros, so they are studying in UK, for example, if they are coming to Poland, if they will debate tournaments with them. So there is a lot of integration between the clubs and between people. But I also want to note that in Poland, it takes you 5 hours by train to go from the furthest city when there is a debate club currently to the other. And we also lost some debate clubs, which just had people who were super active. Then they went to study or work abroad or in different cities. And then there was no local drive in order to continue this. And that also means that there are no more kids coming from these regions, or we don't know about them, because it's very hard to reach to these regions. So I would say that the cooperation and collaboration between clubs, in Kazakhstan, if you started 2 or 3 years ago doing more tournaments, it should come in the next year or 2 that people are starting to mixing between clubs, if they will have opportunity to travel or speak online together. But it's also worth sometimes, if you feel that you would like to get more people involved, to reach out to cities who had the circuit in the past, for example, and there was a drive, there was institutional help, but maybe the person who was willing to make contact or kind of being the leading face left. So it's there is a space to create a new one and to still include the other kids.
In the Philippines, mentorship is somewhat divided by club, but we used to have an organization actually for high school. It was a high school, it's called Interscholastic Debate Education Association, something like that, or Debaters Association. And, it would teach and host tournaments for any high school institution. So we would have 4 tournaments yearly, plus we would have regular seminars. And I benefited a lot from that as a kid. We don't have as much of that nowadays. On occasion, we'll have cross-training. So that happens, a club visits another club, and then they debate against each other, and they fight. I did a seminar for the Philippine teams headed to Worlds for Panama, for Vietnam. So that was all right. It is mostly by clubs, though. People mostly rely on the alumni of their institution to get training. There's a lot of online resources, that's for sure. But in terms of one-on-one training, I can shout out Bea Kizan, who actually teaches a bunch of kids from the province, just because they know each other, and then she just gives them regular lectures and she judges their spars. So, you'll occasionally have people who are very good like that, or you'll have the World School Circuit, which nowadays I think there's been a change of leadership, and they're trying to collect kids from all over the country, not just Manila. So that's also been a good effort. But otherwise, I think there's not a central way to distribute, these types of resources without payment.
Yeah, exactly. It was quite a big shock because they don't necessarily show up at your local tournament, but then they train online with each other.
Yeah,
basically, that's
yeah.
kind of the way how it works. And then they are quite persistent about asking, debaters from more established clubs, I guess, to become their mentors. So some kids show up into my, DMs and ask me, can you train me? I'm from this another city, 2,000 kilometers away from you. And you're like, well, maybe I cannot, but I know someone who can. And then that's the way how it works out.
Yeah, they have a nice system of outsourcing. They always invite a lot of speakers from other clubs to give them lectures or something like that. they're wisely using their resources.
That's kind of interesting. I don't know to what extent that happens with you. I mean, you've mentioned Bea again. Maybe that's doing something similar-ish. I'm not sure if she does that online or not. But
Online.
But yeah, maybe that's one of the ways. And then if I could lead that into another question. So I guess people in Kazakhstan are a bit more familiar with the European circuits overall because we're part of the, UGC basically council and all that. And to an extent, the perception is that in Europe, the national scenes are kind of, so you not necessarily have a ton of local tournaments per se. You don't have them every week or every other week. And many countries, you just have one tournament a year, like in Vienna where I was studying there's basically one tournament a year. I'm not sure to what extent that's the case in Asia or like in different Asian circuits, must be Philippines, etc. Do you rely on kind of your local tournaments more? Do you rely on going somewhere else? If so, to what extent does it strain the funds and stuff? To what extent do you rely on online tournaments maybe these days? How does that stuff go as far as like visiting tournaments?
I can start. Poland moved away from online tournaments because people were very tired of this and they really like to hang out. And as I said, we are a small country, relatively well connected transportation-wise. So we no longer have any online tournaments, but we have different tournament formats and they're kind of either overlapping or they are consuming all of the weekends. So for example, we have the new trend of doing BP tournaments only for high schoolers in Polish language. Mm-hmm. It's called Szkoła Debatuje, and then you have every city want to have their edition, so that consumes like 4 weekends in a school year, right? Then you have the PLD, which is the BP league for everyone. Again, each city wants to host, so you have another 4 weekends taking away for this. Then you have Polish nationals in VP, which is another weekend. Then you have the format, which is combination of WSDC, some kind of Oxford more stylish with prepared motions in Polish language as well, both for high schoolers and for students now. And each of these tournaments consume 2 weekends. Then you also have some PSDC, so it's Polish Schools Nationals in English. Then recently we had the first open, last year we had Krakow for high schoolers as well in English, like WSDC format, and this year as well in Warsaw. So if you combine all of this, it shows that the English-speaking tournaments consume like 2 out of 16 weekends which are available. And for people, then it's trade-off. Either I will go for a local tournament in Polish, I will see my friends, which will be cheaper, or I will try to go for international tournament. So people only, like Poland sent every year delegation to Budapest, Vienna, and to the places where you can easily fly in. But we cannot do this very often because of how the circuit works locally. But I just think it's very, very hard to organize a lot of tournaments on a good quality if you have people who are either working full-time or studying full-time. So usually, from what I remember in our circuit, you had like a weekly meeting or like sometimes twice practices for people to pick. And then the tournament was like something special. It wasn't like a weekly activity or once per month, where now I feel there is a lot of tournaments. At least what it's done, they are capped on 40 teams. So people really fighting to get the registration, but then the tournaments suffer with judges because everyone wants to speak because judging it's less fun. So it's also it has pluses and minuses, but I would say we have a domination of local circuit events and we are not even organizing much BP internationally anymore. We had Krakow 2 years ago and that's it.
Yeah, for Ateneo and for the Philippines, the tournament season was organized around preparing for the next major. So we would have UADC season, and then we would just try and do Asian tournaments in the lead up to it. And you would have maybe one tournament every other week, one tournament every month. And then it's usually pretty slow in the off season, maybe once a month, once every 2 months. Every now and then, if you're lucky or you're okay, I'll spend my life savings, let's have a really good prep season, then you'll fly abroad to have a good prep tournament, or you'll fly abroad to get a really good Worlds prep before you go to Worlds. But usually it's local tournaments. I think it might be a little different now because of the online era. So a lot of Philippine tournaments have not moved back offline because costs are much higher, and the admin is less supportive. It's inflation, you have to buy a room and everything. So it's not the same. When I was in high school and moving into university, there would be like a tournament every weekend, and then you go there and see your friends regularly, and then you'd go crush some debate tournament, and then you go lose or whatever. So it's a little bit different now, but I think in the Philippines, having regular debate tournaments and not choosing, like you didn't have to choose between English or Filipino because there's not really a Filipino circuit to the same degree. So Filipino is not really a strong option to debate in. So you just go English and you just debate until you're tired.
That sounds interesting, but I think we have like the situation in Poland is kind of similar to Kazakhstan, but I guess like for last 4 years for sure we have the tournaments every weekend, and sometimes they even overlap. And we have like a schedule of the tournaments for students, and sometimes we do not even include the high school tournaments in there because like students do not really care about them. And even if like a major tournament from high schoolers, then they put it there so students like university students could come and judge and give them some good education. But generally it sounds that our situation is kind of great. I also wanted to ask, just to like make it to clarify, do you have some kinds of like regional integration as well? So you said that sometimes you send your teams to Budapest or something. Do they come to you often or something like that?
So it's more that there are specific tournaments in Europe which are affordable for particular regions. So for example, in Iona, when you are in UK or Ireland or Scotland, they have tournament almost every weekend, but they are very, very inaccessible money-wise for people from continental Europe. So for example, Serbs need visas. For example, Polish people, even if you will get cheap flights, you need to pay for transfer. They don't offer you the accommodation because that's tournaments based on the crushing system. Sometimes you don't know enough people, but also if you need to pay in pounds on the spot, it doesn't seem like a good place to integrate. But for example, to Budapest, when you can drive by car, or if you can organize 5 speakers, pay for a gas, and go there, it seems like a good option. And also Airbnb and things are cheaper. But B, I think it's also these tournaments are more ESL friendly. So people also feel more comfortable talking in English. And they usually have some competitive speakers, but it's not that you are going there and you know that your chance for breaking it's 5% from the very beginning and very start. And B, they also are capable to attract people to actually come and judge and visit, because it's still fun place to be. Versus sometimes when you go to UK tournaments, same as it's not affordable for many teams, it's also sometimes hard for them to attract a lot of judges to go. So it seems like maybe you will meet some people, but they are running to catch their train to come back to their city because they don't have a crash, or that they're coming to judge for one day because they need to come back to work. So the regional tournaments, which are more closer in Central Europe, also shows that it's usually more relaxed, that you have more time to chat to other people, integrate. But I would say that the biggest factor why we are picking that kind of tournaments is the getting comfort in talking in English. Sometimes when you have people from Balkans or Baltics, you can understand a couple of sentences. So it's also sometimes easier to connect.
For us, the regional integration is a bit hard because, no matter what, you're going to fly, right? Even to another region in the Philippines, you'll have to fly. So drive to the airport. Flights aren't cheap. But usually we go to tournaments in other ASEAN countries where you don't have to get a visa. So Singapore, Malaysia, Indonesia, Hong Kong, Taiwan. It's not in ASEAN, but Taiwan doesn't require a visa for the Philippines. So wherever it's easiest to fly, usually for the Philippines.
Yeah, I guess for us the situation is that basically Kazakh circuit is only integrated with one other country really, which is Kyrgyzstan, because that's one which is closest to the border, especially the Almaty community. I think it's about 4-hour drive. You don't again need a visa or anything. We can come to them, they can come to us. So that's what we typically do. And if the tournament is in Astana, it's typically the case that the local ticket prices are not that expensive between Almaty and Astana, so people just would fly from Astana to Almaty and then take a car. And there is a couple of tournaments that are sponsored there, for example, which do provide quite a lot of travel grants and stuff like that. So we do have some integration, I guess, with the Kyrgyz circuit, and people from there come here, sometimes win local, like, major tournaments, so that's pretty good. But otherwise, I guess that's kind of it, really. You wouldn't really be able to go to basically any other country at this point. So we kind of get by mostly on online tournaments if we want to really integrate with someone else. So if you want to have international practice, that's online. And I think the circuit itself has adapted so that, yeah, you have a lot of offline tournaments for the same reasons that Claudia is talking about. You'd like to chat to people, it's fun. But you have some online stuff, especially run by people from, like, more remote cities, I guess, which people sometimes show up to just because, well, I guess it's kind of also interesting to speak against some new people instead of the same people from the same city you see all the time. But yeah, I guess it's all like just geographics. You cannot do much about that, right?
So if I can add something to this, because it's obviously hard for you guys geographically to connect with other countries. If you know, like, that there are some flights which are more convenient location, what I found out in January, I was seeing a tournament in Turkey, in Istanbul, actually. It was for high schoolers, and it's run by high schoolers for high schoolers. So it's in a private college. It's a very nice tournament. It has 34 rooms, so it's like, you know, almost 80 teams in WSDC, and they're coming from various different countries. So, for example, Kenyan teams are coming because the flights are directly to Istanbul. There are some South African teams coming. There were 6 China teams coming. There were 2 Greece teams coming. There were Serbian teams coming. There was Vienna teams coming. So it's very nice international tournament. I don't think that they're doing BP in person. So Turkey, it's running their online tournaments there. But sometimes if people are willing to integrate them, they will find funding. I would say for Kazakhstan, maybe Turkey, it's a good alternative for in-person for high schoolers, and probably like Vienna, or again, it's very similar to Budapest, but I guess that that's the completely different cost than nearby, right?
You don't need a visa to Turkey, and you have a lot of flights to Turkey, obviously. I remember, like, Istanbul Open used to be a big tournament some 7-8 years ago, maybe before COVID. Some of our teams went there a couple of times. I think someone did even break and, like, have some success. I don't quite remember, really.
I think if they will know that they will have a stable base of, like, you know, couple of countries guaranteed that they will come from some regions, they would be more willing to run. Because for ESDC, this comp is running for, like, you know, 10 years, and they always have, like, you know, a lot of people coming. So that's also potential collaboration or cooperation if you want to expose debaters from here to travel a bit, or trying to incentivize them to some affordable travel options, which will also be connected with debate development and integration.
Yeah, that sounds
really
fair.
nice. Yeah.
All right, so should we move to the another section now?
Yeah, I guess. So the first question in the next section is, how did you generally came to debating? What was your experience, and what was the specific reason you stayed here? Because there are, like, so many structural and not structural barriers to leave.
Yeah, I joined debate because he was my partner for my first Worlds, Luigi. So he was the captain of the high school debate team at the time. And it was the graduation practice of the grade school. And he comes up on stage and he says, well, if anybody wants to come to our summer practice for the high school team, you're free to join. And then, like, the moderator makes, like, a bit of a joke and whatever. And so my English teacher tells me, why don't you try out? For reference, I had always been a very shy kid. Like, I stuttered. I couldn't really speak English that well. But I figured might as well try, right? So I joined the high school team practices. And in the very first debate round, I'm debating against Luigi. Luigi is by now, he won ASDC, which is the Asian High School Championship. And I mean, I'm obliterated. Like, the motion is about taking away guns from the police. And my argument is like, we should do that because we can just teach them how to use Kung Fu. And
what?
Kung Fu. And the karate will help them subdue...
That's not the worst argument I've heard in my life, honestly.
will help them subdue the criminals. And, like, I'm destroyed.
So some world champion stuff, right?
But I stayed in debate for many reasons. At first, I stayed in debate because I liked hanging out with my friends, and one of the seniors told me that Ateneo is an all-boys school, so he said, if you go to these tournaments, you'll get to see girls. And I was like, really? And then, so that's obviously a very petty reason. But then, I won my first tournament, and I learned I really like winning. I'm very responsive to numerical incentives. I like when the numbers go up. So actually, in college, one of the alumni said, you'll get higher speaks if you work out. So I started working out, and I haven't stopped. Even past.
So it worked.
It seems it worked. So I kept going because I liked winning and I liked succeeding. And then at some point in college, I think after my second Worlds, I realized that I stopped enjoying debate because I won. And winning stopped being like joy. It started being like just relief that you didn't let your teammate down. And I meditated on why I'm still in debate if I'm just running away from sadness, right? That's different. That's like you're not doing it because you enjoy debating. You're doing it because you're trying to avoid the failure of debating. But I ended up finding my reason. And it became extremely clear to me just after we won Worlds. Because the first thing we did was we went to Jollibee in Madrid.
Mm-hmm.
It was awful. Dry chicken, not good.
Jollibee is this Philippines
yeah, it's a Filipino.
We don't have that
Chicken. Too bad. And I remembered that I stayed because it's important for me to pay it forward. To give back to the community that's given so much to me. And beyond that, because I did like debating. It turns out I didn't like just winning. I liked the feeling of mentally crushing and destroying another opponent. You can only do that, right? If you're really earnestly debating with them. If you debate and you lie, the other team can always say, they're liars, they misrepped us. But if you really did beat them, you took the room in your hands and you crushed it. That's the most satisfying feeling you can have in debate.
And of course, if you worked out, right?
So
Of course.
basically, you have some sadistic pleasure from debating by this point, which is very relatable to many debaters, I'd imagine.
Just
Yeah.
competitive.
Just as everything else, really. that you
Just
said.
competitive.
These were actually common reasons. I love the community, I want to give back, and I want to crush my opponents.
No, but everything that you say is super relatable because
Yeah.
I think for the last 2 or 3 years, people who win nationals typically give a speech about how, I'm glad I didn't let everyone down because we were the favorites to win. And finally, this, weight on our shoulders off our shoulders. That's how I think we kind of felt to an extent. But yeah, it's true. Crushing people is fun. Right. Claudia, what do you think about all that?
Okay, my story is a bit different. So I was playing handball professionally in high school, and I had nothing to do with any intellectual stuff. I had no idea about the newspapers, about politics or anything, but I really wanted to go to the party to the different city, and we didn't have money. And my friend told me that she was going to these workshops, and they said that there is a tournament that if you pay equivalent, it was a couple of years ago, of like 12 euros, you are getting 2 nights of accommodation in Warsaw, meals. And I'm like, okay, what's the catch? What we need to do? We need to debate a tournament. And I'm like, what is a debate tournament? It's like, okay, so you like talking. So it's just like, you need to stand up, give a speech. This is how she described to me BP format, just saying. What she forgot to mention is they're Polish nationals, because they had open applications. And I'm going there for a workshop before the round 1. And people are using some weird words. OG, CG, extension, feedback. And I'm sitting there and I'm like, uh-oh. That looked like a problem. So the next day we are showing up for this tournament and, white shirts, blazers, elegant.
Oh, yeah.
And we are OG. And we had a bad luck with a draw. So CG were the team who won this nationals eventually. OO or CO was the team who was in the final. So, my friend, we were playing Click Clack Law who will do PM speech because neither wanted to speak first. And she's giving a speech. It was about some religion giving them more rights. And there is a POI about but you know what? It's in the decalogue of this religion. And she looked at me and she's like, do they have it? I'm like, I can't tell you. So our first speeches were minute and a half or something. The second round, we kind of lied our counter prop was not actual counter prop in a policy motion, round 3, quoting a judge. Okay, you guys. So you implemented a model on CG Whip, which contradicted what your partner said, which also contradicted opening government. So you're 4th. So we ended up this tournament on 0 points, which was a record. And no one ever scored like 4 zeros in rounds. And then I was sitting, I was like, I don't want people to remember me as this dumb girl who had 0 points. I'm like, I will come back and I will win this tournament. And there was this girl in a very nice red dress speaking in the final. And I was like, I want to be like this girl at some point. And then there were also like, people were interesting. They were saying smart stuff. And I was like, I want to come back. So I came back for Polish tournaments. And I started doing relatively well, I would say. And then I was volunteering Warsaw Euros, where I barely understood people who were saying to me because I wasn't speaking English in 2016. And then I was like, damn, these people seem so cool. And I can't talk to them. I need to learn English. So I signed myself for like Kyiv Open in 3 months. And I was like, by 3 months, I will be speaking English. So I went to this tournament. As you can guess, I was speaking kind of Polish. I really was trying to push myself. We ended up with like 6 points, so it wasn't terrible, actually. And then we went to some Iona tournaments when I didn't understand the OAs where people were talking to me. I was like, can you speak slower and simpler language to me? What's wrong? Or like we didn't know how to respond. I was actually very slowly developing in debating. So it took me like actually years. And then when I reached some level, when I was being competitive in the higher rooms, it gave a lot of satisfaction, which David said, like crushing people or like winning the tournament against like people who were like, winning worlds or something was like very nice feeling. But why I stayed, I think it's, I really, really like coaching, like a Polish national team. It's something new for me because as a speaker, I didn't have much to develop because I joined very late. So I didn't have university, like to go for worlds more times than once because then COVID happened. So I was like, okay, I achieved my maximum in this. I will be speaking for fun to still like grow a bit. But I want to make Poland like,
Great
doing
again.
doing well. Poland was never great in debating, so it's not again, but like, doing a bit better. And then friends, which you meet along the way. I'm going to my debate friend's wedding in September.
Oh, that's so cute.
So it's very exciting. So I think now I'm staying to meet new people, to visit new places like here, or to meet up with friends in some cities or like places which I really like. And I'm still learning stuff. I'm still learning a lot about like culture, about the politics in different places, which helped me a lot. And it's actually very fun. And I don't have desire to crush the souls of people, but I can agree that it gave a lot of satisfaction.
No, that's fair.
I came to Namat to debating because when I was applying to university, I was following a person, like one guy. He was in the basketball team and he was also in DC Namat, and he was kind of influencer at that time. And I thought, oh, damn, he's so cool. I really like him. I want to be like him, or I want to meet him. And I was actually playing basketball in the high school as well. And then I went to university and went to basketball team and to DC Namat, and here I am. But I do not really like to crush my opponents, but I like to give back to community, and I enjoy being in this community. So I'm really glad to organize some of the tournaments and sometimes the beats, and yeah. But I also think like about the generations coming and switching is that we have like some old guys like Mukhtar who are who have some reputation worldwide and who have dedication to crush their opponents, and some of younger guys who also have that, but we're kind of afraid that when they're going to become too old, what are we going to do?
I mean, it's okay. You're going to find out that soon enough. All right, sure. I mean, yeah, that's all fun games. I guess the best base for debating is being sporty. So you either play handball, basketball, or just work out, or you be
Rock
like
climbing, running.
be like me and don't. I do work out for the last like
Anything goes.
half a year, so something's happening.
Good for you.
All right, so the next thing is, I guess, more so about not speaking but judging, seeing, all of this type of stuff. So both of you clearly are on CA teams of big majors, or you used to be on a lot of CA teams. And so there's a lot of questions to ask about that, but I guess one big question is, why do you guys do that? It's so exhausting, it's so much work. I mean, obviously it is giving back to community, but like, how did you get into all of this stuff? What's your motivation, all that stuff?
Okay, I'll try to keep it brief because I don't think we have that much time to go in a lot of details.
You have 5 different motivations to talk about, I guess.
Oh, yeah. So I think firstly, you are just curious and you want to be that big guy who will have the announcement on the page and that everyone will know who you are. Sometimes it's not true. But B, you want to see how it's being done from the kitchen, if that makes sense. So if I'm a speaker, I want to know how people are allocating judges. I want to know how people testing motions, what they are doing. Like, I see the final product. I want to see how to make the final product better. So I think definitely that part. And we have a lot of control. So sometimes when you are speaking, you don't have control who is your opponent. You don't have a lot of control if the motion will be balanced. You don't have a lot of control who will be judging you. And then you can actually try to see these factors and also maybe sometimes understand that some things are either random or it's very hard to make decisions. So we're also developing kind of understanding, empathy to the format and seeing how hard job it is. And I would say that because I always wanted to do it and I had time to do it, I thought that I'm a good person because I know that a lot of people had other more pressing commitments that time. So I was like, okay, I can be the one who will try to get the know-how and then spread it further. I don't know what was for David.
I think debating as a sport is a fundamentally arrogant sport. That is the character of debating is you look at all these speeches and you think, I can do better, right? It's not like basketball where if you're not 6 feet tall, you just can't dunk on the guy, right?
Not relatable.
All the words in the English language are available to you if you're debating. You just have to put them together. So it doesn't matter who's debating in the room with you. You have the words to give the speech. You just have to put them together. That's all you have to do. So debating is a very main character sport where anybody can really do well, and it's just up to you to chart your path to the heavens. Ad-scoring, CAing a major, I think is very different. It was a different role for me because it was about learning to set aside. My role is no longer to be the main character. It's no longer about me. It's about setting the stage so that other people can write their own story, which I found to be also really fulfilling in a very different way. In a sense, for me, it was still about me. It was how I could be the best ad score. But I don't think I felt as much happiness as I have seeing kids that I've coached win a tournament. For me, that was much more satisfying than winning a regional tournament or a tournament on my own. For me, the most satisfying thing I've experienced in debate was the satisfaction of knowing that the kids that I watched grow from somebody who could barely finish a 7-minute speech to somebody who could win Asia, win Best Speaker of Asia, break at Worlds. I think that's like satisfaction on the level of Sublime.
Well, I guess so. There are 2 types of satisfaction. You see your announcement, or it's a really selfless thing to do type of satisfaction.
It is what it is.
Oh, I mean, no, that's fair. That's fair.
Yeah, but I think that's all the questions that we want to ask, and we're kind of running out of time. So yeah, that's all. Bye, guys.
Cheers.
All right. So thank you guys so much.
Thank
It
you.
was
Yeah,
super
thank you.
fun.
Yeah, see you tomorrow on the tournament.
Woo.
Yeah.
All right.
Tomorrow.
So that's it.
Ендеше достар, сіздер пікірсайысшылармен бірге өткізген осы уақыт пайдалы әрі қызықты болды деген сенімдеміз. Лайк басып, пікір жазып кетіңіздер, және де біздің Instagram және де TikTok парақшаларымызға тіркелуді ұмытпаңыздар. Егер де сіздерге ұнаса, алдағы уақытта жаңа подкастта шығатын болады. Көріскенше.